For over 1,500 years throughout the world, the beloved Saint Nicholas, or Santa Claus as he's often called, has been the source of countless tales, songs, and joyful Christmas spirit. Everyone knows of the many wonderful abilities commonly attributed to Saint Nicholas by our popular culture, and to this day children and adults all over the world believe in him. There are some who take the historical Saint Nicholas very seriously, and claim that he continues to live and work miracles for those who believe. Even our popular culture seems to continually challenge the notion that Santa Claus is no more than a myth. We never seem to tire of the Santa Claus movies, which prove that the children were right all along and that he really exists. Now, what is the correct position to take on this matter? Putting aside all of the contrived advertisements, is the Santa Claus of today substantially different from the St. Nicholas of history? Can Santa Claus be said to really exist today? If he does, in what way does he exist? We will soon probe into this fascinating question, but first, let us take a look at the St. Nicholas of history. According to ancient accounts, St. Nicholas was born between 260 and 280 AD in Patara, Lycia, near the river Xanthus, which is currently near Ovagulu in Turkey. The people of Lycia had a long history of independence. Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, written about 1000 BC, mentions Lycians coming north to defend the Trojans from the Greeks in the famous War of Troy. The most notable of these heroes from Lycia was Sarpedon, the alleged son of Zeus.
En thou Sarpedon malanaikes en Hectora Dione, tai lugar Lycia xanthoi epidinayenti.
Then Sarpedon rebuked Hector very sternly. I have come from afar, even from Lycia and the banks of the river Xanthus. So speaks the poet Homer. In 280 AD, however, Lycia was one of the provinces of the vast Roman Empire. The city of Patara was located near the coast, just east of the river Xanthus, and served as a port for ships. It was in this city of Patara that Nicholas was born. By all accounts, Nicholas's parents were wealthy, and from his birth they raised him as a devout Christian. While Nicholas was still young, however, his parents died in an epidemic, and he was left in charge of their entire estate.
Both his mom and dad were very well off, and they were also very righteous, and they brought St. Nicholas up very, very well. And when they died, he was orphaned at a very early age, and he had a lot of money, and he constantly gave his money away to the poor, all the poor that he had seen, the needs that they had. He always did that.
One of the most ancient stories regarding this time tells of a poor man in Nicholas's area who had 3 daughters. They were unable to earn enough money to even feed themselves, and it seemed like the only way to survive was for the daughters to be sold into slavery or prostitution. Nicholas, who had inherited the wealth from his parents, heard of the family's misfortune. Coming in secret by night, he tossed a bag of gold into the house. It sailed in through an open window, landing in a stocking left before the fire to dry. In the morning, when the gold was discovered, the family was overjoyed. The next night, Nicholas tossed another bag of gold into the house. On the 3rd night, however, he was intercepted by the father, but Nicholas begged him to keep it a secret.
They had, during the time of Diocletian and Maximilian, the emperors, they were very anti-Christian, very anti-Catholic. They persecuted the Christians very much so, and he was taken into prison. He was caught and taken to prison, and he was kept there for many years. And he was tortured there and starved there. You know, he was very very hard. He's lucky he got out there with his life, you know. And when he came out, it was Diocletian had died, and then Emperor Constantine became the emperor, and of course in a short time he himself became a Christian. So St. Nicholas came out, and then the see of Lycia there had become an empty vacant see. And the bishops were wondering, how do they fill it? Who are they going to put the place in there to fill that see? And they had a hard time figuring out who it would be in that place. And so the oldest bishop there had a dream one night, and in that dream he saw a man in white, and this man said that the first person that comes to chapel that morning, choose him to be the bishop, the archbishop. And so they agreed that that's what they were going to do. So of course the next day we were all waiting to see who was going to be the first priest that would come in, and it was St. Nicholas. So they had asked him, and he refused, but later on accepted the bishop.
Another story tells of sailors on the Mediterranean whose ship had become stuck in mud. By that time, St. Nicholas had already become renowned for helping sailors in need. They called on him for help, believing that he could help them by his intercessions. Nicholas actually appeared on the ship, helped them to pry the ship loose, and once it had set sail again, his image disappeared. Shortly after, their ship arrived in Myra, and they looked for a church to pray in thanksgiving. Seeing several priests, they were shocked to see Nicholas himself, just as he had been with them on the boat. They asked him how he was able to hear their calls and help them. Nicholas replied that a life devoted to God allows a person to be so clear-sighted as to be able to actually see others in danger and hear their calls for help. The bishop urged the sailors to devote their lives to God, and that way they will be able to help people in need. In 325 AD, the First Council of Nicaea was convoked under Emperor Constantine. A great dispute had arisen over the teachings of Arius, who was denying the divinity of Christ. Nicholas was among the over 300 bishops present. At the council, Arius argued his position forcefully and at great length. The entire council was silent and permitted him to speak. However, after a while, Nicholas was unable to endure it. He got up, walked over to Arius, and slapped him in the face. Everyone was shocked at such behavior in the solemn assembly, and Arius' supporters demanded justice. With Constantine's support, the bishops decided to strip him of his bishop's garments and put him in prison until after the council, when he would receive a sentence. Nicholas was ashamed and prayed for forgiveness, but did not waver in his conviction about the truth.
And St. Nicholas, being one of the bishops there, was so upset with that, he had slapped Arius for saying that. And so the other bishops of the council, didn't like this outburst, so they removed him temporarily from his position. And then later on, they had seen that it was his zeal, for the truth they reinstated him.
In the middle of the night, Nicholas was released from his chains by Jesus and Mary, and in the morning the jailers found him in his bishop's garments, quietly reading the scriptures. Hearing this, Constantine released him. The Nicene Council eventually decided, in accordance with St. Nicholas, that Christ's divinity is essential to the Orthodox faith. On one occasion, Nicholas was confronted by some weeping men and women. While he was away from the city, the prefect Eustathios had condemned 3 innocent men to death under the influence of a bribe. Immediately, Nicholas rushed to the city in hope of finding them still alive. He arrived to find them already bound, with the sword ready to strike. Nicholas immediately grabbed the sword and threw it to the ground, asking that the charges be cleared. He then confronted the corrupt prefect, who was terrified and repented of his crime. 3 generals who had witnessed this event were on an imperial mission to Phrygia to settle a rebellion. On their return, they told Emperor Constantine how successfully and peacefully the mission had gone. However, the imperial chancellor Evlavios was deceived and bribed into accusing these men of lying and taking the side of the rebellion. Such treachery was common in that time of unrest, and he convinced Constantine that these men must be imprisoned and put to death, as a deterrent against treachery. Constantine assented. The 3 men were shocked to hear their sentence, and then recalled what they had witnessed in Myra. That night they prayed to God. During the night, both Emperor Constantine and Evlavios had the same dream, telling them to immediately free these 3 men. When Constantine had asked who was sending this message, the figure answered, "The Bishop of Myra, Nicholas. God has sent me to tell you to free these men without delay." The next day, after talking to Evlavios, Constantine freed the men and sent them to Nicholas with many beautiful gifts for the cathedral in Myra. The 3 generals all eventually became monks. At this time, the entire Roman Empire was still very much under the influence of the many gods of the old religion. In particular, the temple of Artemis in Ephesus still had a great effect on the people. The goddess Artemis, or Diana in the Latin language, was invoked under many noble titles, including Virgin Mother of All, Goddess of Seafarers, Goddess of the Harvest, and so on. However, Nicholas was convinced that worship of these gods was connected with demonic influence, and set about destroying the temple of Artemis. He went about it with such determination and resolve that it was eventually destroyed to the very foundations. It was in Ephesus, about 100 years later, that Mary was declared to be the fulfillment of these countless archetypes, and solemnly invoked by the Church as the Theotokos, the Mother of God. In 343 AD, St. Nicholas died, and his body was entombed in the cathedral at Myra. Throughout his life, such a reputation for sanctity had followed him that his tomb became an immediate place of pilgrimage. During his life and since that time, so many miracles have been attributed to his intercession that he is known in the Eastern churches as St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker. In 1087, the relics of his body were transferred from Myra to Bali, Italy, where they remain to this day.
What happens even after he died, his bones, his relics, would use oil. And many people that had used this oil were cured of many diseases. And so what happens is that in 1087, I believe it was, what happened is that on May the 9th, 1087, the residents from Bari, Italy, went over to Asia Minor and stole his relics. And then they came back to Bari, Italy, and enshrined his relics there on May 9th. And they made it a feast day. In fact, if you take a look at our calendar, it's called the Feast of Translation of the Holy Relics of St. Nicholas. On May the 9th. So St. Nicholas has 2 feast days. He has December the 6th and also May the 9th. And his relics that are in Bali, even to this day, exude oil. So he's seen as a miracle worker even to this day.